I am on cloud 9 right now. This like 10-year-old kid like came up on his bike up to my window. He goes, roll down your window, and he said, hey, you fucking white bitch, you want to get tased or something like that. I don't know if it was you want to get tased, whatever. But I was so thrilled. Like, so I've lost a lot of weight in the last year, and this is the first time like getting cussed out by a random stranger that they didn't immediately go, hey, you fat bitch. He said, hey, you white bitch, not you fat bitch. You guys! Hey, you white bitch. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. That's a good Friday.
Good morning. I hope your Friday tomorrow is going to be as good as that. Welcome to the Wake Up America show. That's what you get for being here early. I'm Austin Peterson. Today is Thursday, February the 12th. You're in the arena for the Wake Up America show. The Costa is cracking, the world is shifting, and we're the only ones holding the line for the sovereign individual. Wake up, America. Today we're opening with a masterclass in geopolitical strategy. So while the very smart people in the media were calling it a bluff, Donald Trump was sending special forces into Caracas to snatch a dictator in his pajamas. We're deconstructing the madman successes, from the discombobulator that turned the Venezuelan grid to the carrier fleets chilling the blood of the Ayatollahs in Tehran. But this isn't just about today. It's about the truth that they've hidden for 50 years. So we are comparing Trump's victories to the newly unsealed revelations about Richard Nixon, revealing that Nixon wasn't paranoid. He was being spied on by his own Joint Chiefs. We're vindicating the madman strategy and exposing the deep state's original sin. And then gradually, and then suddenly. So the blue state model isn't just failing, it's actually in a terminal tailspin. We're tracking the U-Haul index as California, New York, and Illinois continue to lose congressional seats, while corporations like Wells Fargo and Citadel flee the Arctic gulag for the freedom of Texas and Florida. We're going to deconstruct the billionaire tax suicide and why the nanny state is officially bankrupt. In the bonus block, we are clowning the closet commissars. So we're taking a blowtorch today to a Slate magazine article that is so intellectually bankrupt, it'll make your head spin. So we're meeting the urban progressive woman who forgot she owned a gun until she spilled seltzer on it. And we're explaining why a paperweight in a West Elm coffee table isn't safety, it's a performance. So we're defending the Second Amendment against the people who treat it like a fashion accessory today. Finally, Family Feud in the House. We're dissecting the explosive hearing between Attorney General Pam Bondi and our friend Thomas Massie. Massie is calling for a cover-up investigation, while Bondi is calling him a failed politician and deranged. We're going to take a critical but fair look at the Massie-Trump brouhaha and ask why our best constitutionalist is standing with Khanna and Jamie Raskin. And to give us the ground truth, the one and only Cliff Maloney joins us in the arena today to tell us if the liberty movement is headed for a civil war. Join the rebellion today. Support the Wake Up America show by clicking the like button. Plot the future of freedom. Join our conspiracy of rebels at forlibertynetwork.com and get your Founding Flavors coffee this morning at forlibertyshop.com. Every purchase that you make during this live show goes to unlock that bonus content. We are tracking live. Hit 100 points for the mini documentary and 150 for the great grift off. The coffee's black. The facts are lethal. Wake Up America show starts right now. Let's do it. Alrighty, so rise and freedom, America. It's Thursday, February the 12th, 2026. We're starting the morning by shattering the greatest historical lie of the 20th century. Wake up, America. For 50 years, the establishment has told you that Richard Nixon was a paranoid, unhinged loon who imagined enemies under every bed. But as Donald Trump is rearranging the global stage like a grandmaster playing speed chess, we finally have the proof that Nixon wasn't paranoid. He was just the first target of the same administrative vampires we're fighting today. Both men shared a strange and original mind and a disdain for the rituals of the casta, the upper class, and a belief in the madman theory, as they call it. So this is the idea that the best way to keep your enemies from starting a war is to make them think that you're crazy enough to end one. So from the Caracas raid to the Tehran pressure, Trump is running the Nixon playbook, but this time the Patriots are the ones holding the files. And Trump didn't back down. He didn't quit when he got impeached. Good morning, SeaWorld girl. It's so nice to see you here. Wake up, America. The New York Times dropped a bomb that should have rewritten every history book in this country. James Rosen of the New York Times, of all places, uncovered unsealed testimony from Richard Nixon in 1975. And it turns out that the Pentagon was running a massive spy ring inside the White House. So we're talking about the Moore Radford affair. A Navy yeoman named Charles Radford, who was caught filching top secret documents from the briefcases of Kissinger and Haig to give them to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So Nixon wasn't imagining a deep state. He was literally watching the Pentagon hijack his foreign policy to stop him from ending the Cold War. The plumbers weren't a sign of madness that he talked about. They were actually a surgical reaction to an infestation of spies from the deep state. So just like Trump had to navigate the Vindmans and the Millies of the world, Nixon was being spied on by the very men that he was supposed to command. The only difference, Trump learned from Nixon's mistake. He didn't hide the scandal to save the military's morale. He signed the executive orders to flush them out. So wake up, America. While the very smart people at the State Department were clutching their pearls, Donald Trump was busy snatching Nicolas Maduro out of his bedroom in Caracas. And how did he do it? He used the discombobulator. Sometimes he sounds like a superhero. Sometimes he sounds like a super clown. And then sometimes, well, he sounds like a super villain clown.
David, I mean, I know you're a sophisticated guy. The world is a mess. The world is as angry as it gets. Well, you think this is going to cause a little more anger? The world is an angry place.
Exacerbated problem.
David.
He's right. Morning, Cecilia. Hope you're feeling good today. Trump told the New York Post that his secret weapon, the discombobulator, was crucial to the January 3rd raid. It rendered Russian and Chinese rockets completely useless and turned off the Venezuelan defense grid like it was a light switch. The left called it a bluff. They called it posturing. But while they were tweeting and doing nothing useful, special forces were slaughtering Cuban bodyguards and bringing the dictator to New York to face drug charges. So this is the madman at work. Unlike the endless quagmires of the past, Trump surgically transforms a hostile regime into a dependent one without fixing a single broken window and no American casualties. Venezuelan oil is now being sold by American companies, and we didn't have to spend 20 years nation building in the jungle or in the desert. Easy breezy cover girl. So to understand why the discombobulator works in Caracas, you have to understand the man who built the original blueprint for strategic insanity. Richard Nixon famously told H.R. Haldeman on a foggy beach in 1968, "I call it the madman theory, Bob. I want the North Vietnamese to believe I've reached the point that I might do anything." So Nixon wasn't just talking. He was actually engineering a psychological weapon. In October of 1969, Richard Nixon launched Operation Giant Lance, which was a top secret global nuclear alert. 18 B-52 bombers loaded with thermonuclear weapons took off from bases in California and Washington and flew towards the Soviet Union for 3 days straight. It was a show of force, specifically designed to be loud enough for Soviet intelligence to pick up, but secret from the American public. He jarred the Soviets into realizing that a rational leader is easy to predict, but a madman is impossible to contain. File that away. Think about that when you watch Trump's strategy. Fast forward 50 years, and the madman is back in the arena. Donald Trump didn't just inherit Nixon's strategy. He perfected it with 21st century technology. So while the very smart people were calling for measured diplomacy, Trump gave the order for Operation Absolute Resolve at 10:46 p.m. on January 6, 2026. U.S. forces didn't threaten. They'd moved into Caracas airspace. Despite 53 long and medium-range air defense systems, they had 440 anti-aircraft cannons. Trump revealed to the New York Post that they used a secret weapon called the discombobulator to paralyze the enemy. Eyewitness accounts from Venezuelan security guards describe radar systems shutting down and a sensation like a sonic shockwave that caused intense vibrations, disorientation, and a physical collapse. So just like Nixon used the threat of the nuclear button to force Hanoi to the table during the 1972 Christmas bombings, Trump used the discombobulator to snatch Maduro from his fortress in less than 30 minutes. This is a grand strategy, and it's all hiding in plain sight. So precise. Gotta love it. President Fafo, yes. If you'd think that the discombobulator, though, is just a funny name for a standard jammer, you're actually not paying attention to the technical evolution of the arena. We're talking about the first operational debut of a pulse-modulated high-power microwave, HPM. It's a directed energy weapon. This isn't just one device, it's a two-frequency nightmare for any adversary. First, it delivers a soft kill to the silicon, so the microwave energy enters through antennas and sensors, and it turns the enemy's own internal wiring into a receiving antenna for a massive voltage spike. So this causes what engineers call latch up, where digital logic gates freeze and require a hard reboot, or at a higher power, it physically melts the microscopic junctions inside Russian and Chinese chips. So that is why Trump told the New York Post that Maduro's guards were pressing buttons and nothing worked. But the madman strategy doesn't stop at the machines. It goes for the biology. So the second frequency targets the human nervous system through the fray effect. By pulsing radio frequency energy, the weapon causes the tissue in the human skull to expand and contract at a microscopic level, generating a pressure wave that travels to the inner ear. This isn't just a sound. It is a vestibular overload that induces instant vertigo, projectile vomiting, and nosebleeds. Eyewitnesses in Caracas describe a sonic whistle that made their heads feel like they were exploding from the inside. They were even paralyzed on the ground, unable to even stand, while a team of only 20 Delta Force operators walked into the fortress without a single casualty. So this is the invisible crowd control that the deep state's been hiding for decades, and the madman just put it on the front page of the New York Post. We're coming for you. Okay? Wake up, America. The entire Western Hemisphere has become Trump's sandbox, like it or not. But the collectivists are panicking. Look at the map. Look from Javier Milei in Argentina to Nayib Bukele in El Salvador. We are seeing an unprecedented rise of pro-liberty, pro-Trump leaders. After the Maduro raid, Javier Milei, anarcho-capitalist that he is, called the dictator a narco-terrorist and offered Washington full support. Panama booted out the Chinese port managers, and the Mexican president, Claudia Sheinbaum, cut off oil to Cuba after a single phone call from the White House. Trump is starving communist regimes. He's starving Havana of fuel. He's doing it by rearranging the scenery of the entire geopolitical stage. He isn't bound by any rules. He's not bound by any rituals. He's not going to play nice. He's not bound by the weakness of his predecessors. He's utterly unpredictable, and that's why Tehran is shaking. This is like that weapon in Atlas Shrugged man, Captain Tight Pants. Welcome to the Wake Up America show, guys. Looks like you guys are unlocking that bonus content. You'll love to see it. Wake up, America. The Ayatollahs are battered, bruised, and staring at a U.S. carrier fleet in the Persian Gulf. So Trump already dropped the bunker busters on their nuclear sites. We remember the great wailing and gnashing of teeth over that. Now he wants to negotiate. But the Iranians know snatching Khamenei in his pajamas isn't off the table. Deploy the discombobulator. Trump is a builder of gilded towers. He takes tremendous risks. He doesn't plan small. The very smart people in D.C. are troubled right now. The Iranians are terrified. You'd have to be. Meanwhile, in China, Xi Jinping is busy purging his own generals because he's afraid of his own military caste. Invading Taiwan has become a distant dream while Xi smashes his own domestic rivals. Trump isn't just winning the war, he's winning the world by making every other aggressor realize that the cost of crossing the American people is simply a cost that is too high to pay. So we're going to finish this epic block in discussion with the final vindication. Wake up, America. The same deep state that spied on Nixon and lied about Trump tried to use Jeffrey Epstein to smother the revolution. Let's not pretend that these aren't partisan issues, or I don't. Like some people say, well, I don't think about party the same way some people say, well, I don't think about race. You may not see party, but party sees you. The left destroy Republican presidents. Tom Hartman, the commie on Russia Today, literally believes that Ronald Reagan destroyed this country. I'm not kidding. The Democrats have concocted. Now, they haven't won this battle yet, but think about this. The left destroyed Nixon's legacy. The left completely obliterated Nixon and his importance from our history books growing up. You don't cover that much time in history. You spend all your time on the Holocaust, which, and the Civil War, so you can feel bad about yourself. But the left has a whole game plan ready to run on Ronald Reagan, and they are waiting for the day that they can get enough leverage into the right so that they can destroy the legacy of Ronald Reagan. Because Tom Hartman and all of these lefties, they have this conspiracy theories about Ronald Reagan that he is the reason why everything has gone bad today, that everything was going wonderfully until Ronald Reagan came along, and then Ronald Reagan destroyed this country. Can you imagine what it takes to believe something like that and know that you're staring in the face of American history, that 49 out of 50 states elected Ronald Reagan for his second term, that Ronald Reagan was a truly great president, one of the greatest American presidents. I'll put him in the top 10. I would put him, if it was 10, it would be 9 or 10, but I think Ronald Reagan definitely deserves to be up there in the top 10. And there's still time to judge. But if you put him and you put Donald Trump on Mount Rushmore and all the liberals' heads explode, the Native Americans blow up. You know what? If the next president wants to put Trump and Ronald Reagan on Mount Rushmore, but you and I all know that America wasn't all that great. When we talk about making America great again, what are we talking about? We're talking about the years of darkness between Calvin Coolidge and Ronald Reagan. Does anybody know their history? Are you reading our children's books, by the way? We all know that the truth is that it was darkness. It was the Great Society. It was the New Deal. It was World Wars. It was Vietnam. It was all the Democrat years between Calvin Coolidge and Ronald Reagan was a period of great darkness, civil strife, the 1960s and the 70s, political assassinations everywhere. The Democrats want to bring that back, and they started it with Charlie Kirk. They're trying to get it back. They're trying to revive the LBJ years. And so they have to try and destroy the legacy of Ronald Reagan. And they ran the playbook on Richard Nixon that they on Donald Trump, and Donald Trump learned from Richard Nixon, fought back, and said, hell no, I'm not going anywhere. And he came back, and he kept fighting. He did that for you. What did Martin Luther King Jr. do? He died for our sins. I don't believe in your civic religion, lefties. I'm an atheist to communism. Welcome, Drew Van Runkle. Unfolding Joker is here. Joni Rankin's giving me the amen. How about you give me the hallelujah? Wake up, America. The same deep state that spied on Nixon and lied about Trump tried to use Jeffrey Epstein to smother the revolution. But the files are out. We now know Trump was the first to rat out Epstein in 2006, calling him evil and warning the police about Ghislaine Maxwell. He was the only famous person who voluntarily helped the victim's lawyers. Nixon's paranoia was reality, and Trump's rat trapping was truth. We're living in Donald Trump's world now, where the madman is the only sane one in the room, and we're retrieving the future from the hands of the bureaucrats and returning it to the individual through libertarian nationalism. Join the rebellion at forlibertynetwork.com. Get your founding flavors coffee at forlibertyshop.com and help us reach the milestones to unlock the truth. The arena is calling, and we are just getting started. It's time to rise in freedom, America. Can I just take a brief moment? Can I detour for just a sec and remind you about all of the wonderful things that you guys are doing over here at For Liberty Network? I say you guys. Somebody I spoke to yesterday, he became a $17.76 a month supporter of the network. And he's like, I just love what you're doing. And I was like, great, thank you. And I say, but I love what we're doing. We're doing this together. You realize. Drew Van Runkle for sure. Joni Rankin, Jimmy Joe Patty. I mean, I'm looking at a who's who of patriots right over here in the Rumble chat. These are real people who are committed to real ideas, fighting for a real cause. And I am their champion. So support your champion and make sure that when he goes into battle that he has the best sword and shield that he can. Give me the armor of God. In politics, money is God. Head to forlibertyshop.com. That's the number 4libertyshop.com. Head to forlibertyshop.com and buy a box of Founding Flavors coffee. We've already raised $25 towards the bonus content. So head to forlibertyshop.com. That's the number 4libertyshop.com. And every purchase that you make, not only are you getting incredible coffee or incredible t-shirts or merchandise like our new Kiss Me, I'm a Libertarian shirt, but you're going to support a layer of activism that is sorely needed in this country. If you want to see Javier Mileiism brought to the United States, if you want to see me build a bridge to Argentine libertarianism, successful libertarianism, then make a donation now. Because that's what it's doing. That and a whole lot more. Libertarian Nationalist Party. I know people are like, oh, party. No, just Republicans. We're a caucus right now. Like, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Right now we're a cult following. How do we go from a cult following to mainstream? Well, we got to recruit, right? Is there anybody out there that you know that would love a phone call from Austin Peterson? Do you know someone in your life that you could just sit down and say, hey, Austin is a cool guy. Look at what he's doing. Would you support him? He's trying to build an army of regular people out there who love their country, who love liberty. Would you introduce me to someone? Would you take me home and introduce me to your mom? I think you would. So hook us up with a friend, and that will be doing a lot as well. Click the like button. That's free when you're watching the show. Repost it, share it with your friends. That's totally free way to support the network as well. I could not do it without you. Somebody asked me, who's paying you? Some angry liberal on my Facebook page yesterday. Who's paying you? I'm like, well, you are, sir, through your engagement here on social media. He's like, well, thanks for being honest about it. You know who's paying me? Everybody who's donates $17.76 a month, right? I did introduce you to my mom. She likes you, says Cecilia. Okay, Cecilia, you're doing much. You're doing so much. Let's see if I can find a clip so I can take a drink of water real quick.
$5.5 million to lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and intersex advocacy in Uganda. Aren't you?
Yes.
$5.5 million to lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and intersex advocacy in Uganda. Aren't you?
Yes.
5.5.
I don't know why, but whenever he just says anything like that, I just scream laughing, right? Rise in freedom, America. Today's Thursday, February the 12th, 2026. We are witnessing the great unraveling of the blue state model. Ernest Hemingway famously asked how a man goes bankrupt, and the answer was gradually and then suddenly. We are in the suddenly phase. Just look at the headlines from yesterday. FoxNews.com reported that New York and Illinois aren't just losing people, they're losing their souls and their solvency. Wells Fargo just packed up its wealth management headquarters and bolted from San Francisco to West Palm Beach. Why? Because the Sunshine State values capital while the Golden State only values compliance. So the corporate exodus is no longer a trickle. It is now a dam break, and the water is rushing straight towards liberty and the South. Wake up, America. You want to know why the elites are fleeing the cities that they helped build? Ask Ken Griffin, the man who ran Citadel, the most successful hedge fund in the world. He recently revealed the grisly reality of life in Chicago, a place he now calls a failed city-state. So Griffin told Fox News he had 25 bullet holes in the front of his apartment building. He had colleagues with bullets flying through their car windows on their way to work. This isn't a movie. This is modern-day Illinois under the radical left. Griffin moved his entire $65 billion empire to Miami because he wanted to live in a place where people talk about their children's future at dinner instead of talking about crime, cronyism, and surviving the drive home. Florida isn't just a state anymore. It's now a full-blown refuge from the commie chaos of the North. Wake up, America. California has decided that the best way to fix a hole in the bucket is to kick the bucket down the stairs. The radicals in Sacramento are pushing a billionaire tax. That's a retroactive 5% hit on net worth that would apply even if you already moved away. Palmer Luckey, who is the genius behind Oculus and Anduril, called it out for what it is, a theft to fund fraud, waste, and political favors. He warned that founders like him would have to sell off their companies just to pay the state for the privilege of being robbed. Yeah, billionaires are usually billionaires on paper, that they don't actually have, they don't go swimming in. I know that the left got one-shotted by, their brains were one-shotted by Scrooge McDuck swimming in gold. You know, you can't actually do that. You know, you have the assets. You have assets. The rich have assets. Bill Ackman says Hollywood is already toast, and now the tech titans are hitting the G5 to Texas. Gavin Newsom likes to call California a blueprint, but the only thing they've printed is a map showing everyone the fastest route to the border. Wake up, America. This incompetence, it's not just fiscal. It is a threat to the homeland. Interior Secretary Doug Burgum recently labeled California a national security risk. While the Trump administration is pushing for energy dominance, California is importing 60% of its oil from foreign countries like Iraq. They would rather pay terrorists for oil than dig a hole in Kern County. And you, the taxpayer, you're paying the climate tax. So data shows that electricity costs 18 cents per kilowatt hour in blue states versus just 11 cents in red states. So California families are paying $650 more per year just to keep the lights on compared to their cousins in Texas. It's a green ideology that leaves people in the dark and countries on their knees. Wake up, America. The all-knowing U-Haul Index does not lie. The people are voting with their feet, and the map of American power is being redrawn in real time. Projections for the 2030 census show that California is slated to lose 4 or 5 congressional seats. New York and Illinois are looking at Texas up to 4 more, maybe. Meanwhile, Texas is projected, to gain 4. And Florida, Florida's set to pick up 3. So this is a historic shift of representation from the tyrant states to the free states. For the first time since statehood, California is becoming a geopolitical afterthought. The power is now moving to the places that value markets, opportunity, and the right to be left alone. Imagine what will happen to their representation when all of the illegal immigrants are kicked out of the country. Can you imagine what the real population numbers are? So let's finish this block with the truth that the lefty media hates. Wake up, America. The left says people are moving for the weather, but Utah, Idaho, Montana, they don't have beaches. and they are crushing the growth indices. People are moving because they've had it with the nanny state telling them how to spend their money and how to raise their kids. 9 out of the 10 top states losing population voted for Kamala Harris, and 7 out of the top 10 voted for Trump. So the correlation is 100%. What's the magic elixir? Liberty. Gradually, the blue states rotted from within, and now suddenly the collapse is complete. But don't worry, guys. The arena is open. The rebellion is brewing. Join us at Discord at forlibertynetwork.com. Let's plot the return of prosperity. Let's be a part of the future. Let's plan and build and grow and be the future. It's time to rise in freedom, America. If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, good morning and welcome to the stream. Don't forget to click that like button as you file into the arena. We'll be glad to have you be a regular guest on this show. If today is the first time that you have ever watched the Wake Up America show and you're enjoying the content, we'd love to have you come back and join us 5 days a week and be a regular viewer. We make this a very informative show. We're going to show you things that you've never seen. I saw everybody was talking about the Nixon thing last night, and I was just laughing because I always say that if you watch the Wake Up America show, that you're going to hear my stories later on that day in like the alternative press, and then in a day or two or three or four, you're going to hear about it on the legacy media. So what you hear and see here on the Wake Up America show is valuable because if you wanted to double or triple check my claim, just go back in my archive, the shows just from this week. I was covering the Nixon story, and then all of a sudden I saw last night late people started posting these things, and I know it's a personal thing, and I shouldn't be so petty, but it just pisses me off so much because like they have these posts and it's saying the same things I have already said, but they just their posts blow up, and I'm just like, what the fuck? And you know what the thing is that you'll never get credit for being first. Like it's kind of like Tesla and Edison to some extent. The guy who's the inventor, the guy who comes up with the ideas, he's like, oh, look at this stunning thing, and then somebody's like, yoink, and then they package it up and they put it in the PR and then they put it out there. I mean, what can you do about that? But it's like when I ran for president in 2016 as a libertarian, and then like a year later, somebody's like, oh, you should run for president again. And I'm like, I just did. Run again. If you knew what it was like, you wouldn't say that. Support the Wake Up America show at forlibertyshop.com. When you go to forlibertyshop.com, you're going to see the sexiest white redheaded libertarian girl. She's got the most beautiful, creamy white skin. She's definitely white or something. And I know that really terrifies some people, but
no, God, please.
She's not white. She's Jewish. Hey, does that count? Doesn't count anymore. If you're white and Jewish, man, the Democrats will murder you. Kiss Me, I'm Libertarian shirts at 4libertyshop. You're going to hell. Austin. Kiss Me, I'm Libertarian shirts at 4libertyshop.com. That's the number 4libertyshop.com. Head on over to 4libertyshop.com. And during the live show, if you make a purchase, then you will help to unlock our bonus content during the live show. Get your tickets. Hear ye. Get your tickets for Peterson's Patriots Boston 250th anniversary tour. Man, Stephanie and I and Justin and I are cooking up something good for you. Head over to 4libertyshop.com and join me, my brother Justin, Stephanie, for an extraordinary journey through the cradle of American liberty. Walk the same cobblestone streets where patriots sparked a revolution. Stand where history was made and experience the birth of American freedom like never before. This is Boston's 250th anniversary celebration hosted by me, Justin, and Stephanie in Boston, May 1st and 2nd. Head to 4libertyshop.com. Get your tickets today. Remember, if you're a Peterson's Patriot, you get a discount. Head on over today, and if somebody buys a ticket during the show, that is going to one-shot unlock that bonus content. You guys notice something different about the show today? I wonder if you guys could figure it out. If there's something, has anybody caught on to something that's a little bit unique on the Wake Up America show? I wonder if they've noticed that something's just a little bit different. Peter the Great says, are you ditching the Discord once you go that self-doxing requirement? The Discord right now is just a bridge until we have the cash to build an infrastructure of our own that we don't have to rely on them. Like it's going to be important for us to get away from certain mainstream platforms. I think we'll always be on Rumble because to some extent we could trust Rumble, but my strategy is always trust nobody. So I no longer put all my eggs in one basket. But the goal, Peter the Great, is to get away from Discord so that forlibertynetwork.com is our own website and our own informational hub. And we'll get there. But right now I have to use free platforms while I invest in other technologies like CRM software and certain AI tools that are very expensive that I have to spend, plus trying to expand employees and payroll. But my hope is that if I'm successful in getting my 800 Peterson's Patriots by the end of this year, if I find 800 people and they're donating $17.76 a month, with questions like that, we don't have to worry about anymore. So at my number one goal, my number one highest order task is to convince as many people this year to just become monthly supporters of the network. So if you go to forlibertyshop.com and you're making purchases, those are great. But if you want to really become a sustaining member of what we're building over here, then make sure that you go to wakeupamericashow.com/support this morning and become a Peterson's Patriots. If you need a phone call, if you need a phone call to talk about it, I'm happy to do that. We do have plenty of people who are in the chat who are already Peterson's Patriots. If you're already like a 1776er, consider becoming a 50 a month Grant's Army. Right? The thing about that is that if you just can convince a few people to go from 1776 to 50 a month, if you can swing it, if it's something you can do, then we start dramatically changing outcomes, right? Once I have an avalanche of cash going through this, Stephanie and I were talking about this yesterday. We're talking about finances, and she's really become an amazing accountant over the past year. Let's give it up for Steffi because she's running the books. But Steffi and I were saying this. We're like, we are highly capable. We're at the middle of our careers. We're highly capable. We're very technical. Right, we understand operations, order of operations. We got a solid plan. There's nothing that could stop us if we had a certain cash flow. So it's not like if we had money, we don't know what we would do with it. We know exactly what we would do with it, but we've got to get it first. And I'm just going to go grassroots power and just go out there and just brute force it. I'm going to find 800 people who want to build libertarian nationalism in the United States and convince them to sign up. It's as simple as that. I mean, $17.76 a month. Just do the math. So that's how we're going to go from a cult movement, which is what we are at this moment, to a mainstream movement. And when we start spending money in races, I've already started giving a little bit of your guys' money to like Tony Lavasco. I hope you don't mind. Just little bits. But I really need to start writing big checks to the people who believe what we believe. So you guys are making it happen, and without you, I couldn't do it. If you're already a 1776er or above, if you're already a monthly supporter in the chat, just drop an American flag. I just want to be able to like show everyone who we are as a group. St. Selma, there she is. She's got it. So that's the plan. There we go. AP and Steffi, way committed to the cause. You guys are awesome. Thanks, Friggity. We're in it. I've burned my boats. Succeed or die. That's how it is. I'm so grateful to have you guys as friends. We started this show 3 years ago, a little bit over 3 years ago, and most podcasts fail. But we built a network. We haven't failed. So, no, that's part and parcel that you guys helped build it as well. So Siggy's, Southcott, Frickety, cults, more fun as a follower, more money as a leader. True. Got me there, Andy. People are like, you're a grifter, you're getting rich. I'm like, go talk to Brad. Brad makes all the money. Rise in Freedom America. We have to talk about the total intellectual bankruptcy of the Slate magazine intelligentsia. I was laughing so hard reading this article. Yesterday, a writer named Christina Cotterici published a piece called My Gun and Me, which it's like Black Like Me. If you're going to do Gunface, is Gunface like Blackface? So this story was absolutely hilarious. So It was so embarrassing. It's the most embarrassing thing that you'll read all year. So go read it. She admits that she owned a Smith & Wesson 9mm. Get this, she forgot she had it. She had it stashed in a coffee table until a 2-year-old spilled seltzer on it. She had to choke out nervous laughter to her queer left-leaning friends, assuring them the gun was padlocked inside a hidden case with the keys hidden and absolutely no bullets in the house. Wake up, America. That's not a self-defense plan. That's a paperweight with a brand name. The radical left treats the Second Amendment like a social experiment. Khanna admits she only bought the gun as a work assignment to see what the pro-patriot crowd was like. I mean, come on, lady. I was born at night, not last night. Her gun instructor that she found had to tell her not to rack the slide like she was watching Glee. And the moment that she hit a bullseye, she starts fantasizing about being Mariska Hargitay from SVU. It's all a cosmic joke to these people. They call gun ownership toxic waste until they feel the power in their hands. And then it becomes a flirty conversation piece at an indoor range. So while the rest of us are defending our homes and our families, or like in my case, collecting for posterity because I deeply, deeply love history, they're worried about whether their pink earmuffs are too gender binary. It was research. Most expensive paperweight. Oh, yeah. So Khanna, she tried to connect her gun ownership to the threat of Trump, of course, but then she brings up the assassination of Charlie Kirk. She admits that when Kirk was shot by a radical trans activist in September, she was glad to have her gun, but then she watches the video and then decides guns are too gruesome. Right? She lamented the death of Renee Nicole Good in Minneapolis, but she conveniently ignores that the radicalized pink pistols she visited are experiencing a surge in membership because the left has created a culture of paranoia. They want the protection of the tool, but refuse the responsibility of the ammunition. So this is the dangerous reality of progressive gun ownership. Khanna admits that queer people are arming themselves in record numbers, but they have no clue what they are doing. So she points to a Washington Post article where a trans woman is pictured posing with her finger on the trigger of a revolver while surrounded with her friends. And of course, as you know, that is the first rule of firearm safety. And they're breaking it for a photo op, right? They aren't protecting the community. They're just an accidental discharge waiting to happen, right? They're so busy rearranging their gender-neutral earmuffs that they forget that a gun is a lethal machine. It's not a prop for a Slate editorial. Khanna finally admits the truth that for the left, picking up a gun is an abandonment of values. She says guns are a personal answer to a collective problem and that they embody a turning inward. Translation, they have lost faith in their totalitarian system they built to protect them, so they are resorting to the very tools they tried to ban for decades. But even then, they can't commit. She still hasn't bought a box of bullets. She would rather be a victim of circumstance than a ready combatant because she's afraid that arming herself makes her just like the patriots she despises. Cash for the cause. If you haven't read AP's Libertarian Nationalist Manifesto, do it. The most rational and effective version of libertarianism written in the 21st century. Well, thank you, Frickety. It's a philosophy and it's a strategy. It's a philosophy and it's a strategy. That's what makes my brand new branch of libertarianism unique, is that it is not just the ideas. It's tactics to put those ideas into practice. The Second Amendment isn't a project. It isn't a fantasy, and it certainly isn't something that you stash in a coffee table and then forget about it. It is the final defense of the individual against the tyranny of the state and the chaos of the mob. Khanna wants to mitigate harm, but she refuses to recognize that the greatest harm comes from disarmed innocents facing armed predators. The arena is calling, and it doesn't care about your Mariska Hargitay complex. Join the rebellion at forlibertynetwork.com. Get your Founding Flavors coffee and stay armed, stay alert. And for the love of liberty, buy some ammo. Rise and freedom, America. What say you? Don't forget to click that like button. And if you haven't clicked the like button, we'd love to have you be a regular guest on the Wake Up America show. Click the follow button as well. Good morning, fellow libertarian nationalists. Mo Farmer, Mo Farmer, Mo Farmer, Mo. Mo Farmer, Mo Farmer, Mo. I think we're going to unlock the bonus content today, the mini documentary. What do you guys think? Are we going to make it? Oh, $45 raise out of 100? That's fantastic. We got 100 people. Everybody donate $1. Attorney General Pam Bondi faced off Congress yesterday, especially against Jamie Raskin.
You can let her filibuster all day long, but not on our watch. Not on our time. No way. And I told you about that, Attorney General, before you started.
You don't tell me.
Yeah, I did tell you because we saw what you did in the Senate.
A lawyer, not even a lawyer.
Committee will be in order.
Not even a lawyer.
Back at least 45 seconds.
We will give you a few more seconds. I
Not
said
a
that
few more,
already.
45 seconds.
Okay, I'm timing right now, Mr. Nadler. Go
All
ahead.
right.
My time.
You can let her filibuster all day long, but not on our watch.
If you're not buying ammo by the case, you're doing it wrong. That's right, Peter the Great. Keep an eye out for that clip you were asking for with me and the judge today, talking about guns from yesterday. That clip should be coming out soon. Brad will be dropping it on my socials, and it will be uploaded to Rumble. Rumble now has Rumble Shorts. Did you guys see this? This was good. Alrighty. So, what do I want to do next? Oh, I liked this one. Matt Walsh posted this yesterday. It's hard to believe, but for most of American history, Congress was filled with high IQ men who were extremely articulate and took the job seriously. Oh, I don't know about that.
Didn't ask Merrick Garland anything about Epstein, not once. When he was
Weak sauce.
And also, I want the record to reflect that, with this anti-Semitic culture right now, she voted against a resolution condemning.
Oh,
is
Jewish.
I just want to be clear.
Do you want to go there, Attorney General? Or do you want to go there? Are you serious? Talking about anti-Semitism to a woman who lost her grandfather in the Holocaust? Really?
God,
Committee will
damn, the cringe.
Talk to Jared Wise about anti-Semitism.
The ranking member knows that.
Can I get like 30 seconds?
Can you shut the hell up, all of you? You're all pathetic. Ugh. All right, this next segment's going to be a doozy. Wake up, America. We're entering the arena for a segment that requires us now to be sharp as a scalpel and surgical and grounded as the Constitution itself. We need to talk about one of the most brilliant minds in Washington, a man who has stood on the front lines for liberty time and time again, Representative Thomas Massie. But even titans can stumble when they let a personal feud cloud a global victory. We're deconstructing what I'm calling the Massie misfire and why his recent bizarre pivot on the Epstein Files is actually doing the Democrats' dirty work.
Respond, and then the gentleman can move to the next question.
It's my time.
Within 40 minutes, you asked me a question. Within 40 minutes, Wexner's name was added back.
Within 40 minutes of me catching you red-handed.
There was one redaction out
Where
of
he's
over
listed as a co-conspirator.
and we invited you in. This guy has Trump derangement syndrome. He needs to get. You're a failed politician.
Gentlemen,
You need to
I
get
want
on
you to
these
watch the
matters.
video.
Mr. Chairman, please restore his time and remind the witness of the rules here.
This is a fiasco. Let's be clear. Thomas Massie is a friend of this show. He's a hero to anyone who loves the Second Amendment and the Bill of Rights. He was the driving force behind the Epstein Files Transparency Act, which President Trump signed into law in November 2025. Massie wanted the truth, and he fought like a dog to get it. But yesterday, during a combative hearing with Attorney General Pam Bondi, the Titan from Kentucky seemed to lose his way in the fog of his own friction with the White House. So while Bondi is holding the line against the radical left, Massie's firing from the flank, accusing her department of a cover-up over redactions that he himself helped force into existence through his own legislation. So the irony here is thick enough to cut with a chainsaw. Massie spends months demanding the release of these files, and now that 3 million pages are out, he's hammer and tongs with Bondi over why they aren't perfect. Right? He stood in that hearing room and told the Attorney General that the Justice Department literally did the worst thing you could do to the survivors, because in a scramble to comply with a 30-day deadline he helped mandate, some victims' names were inadvertently left in while some powerful names were redacted. But here's the rub. Bondi reminded the committee that those redactions are often required by law to protect grand jury secrecy and victim privacy, the very things Massie claims to champion. This is a complicated issue. It's not a black or white, one person is all wrong or one other person is all wrong. This is a circus, and everyone is a clown in a little. Everybody's got a red nose on this one. And this is where it gets bizarre, because Massie has made massive claims that he would reveal the names of, quote, likely incriminated child abusers from the House floor. On Monday, he and Democrat Khanna went to the DOJ, reviewed the files, and claimed that they found 6, quote, powerful men that the government was hiding. Massie said he was, quote, ready to name them, but then what happens? He turns around and says he should probably do that from the floor later. So he punted while the left used his cover-up rhetoric to attack the Trump administration. If you've got the names, Thomas, put them in the damn congressional record. Don't use your time to call the Attorney General a failure when she's the one opening the vault that the Biden-Obama machine kept locked for decades. Am I wrong? Wake up, America. We have to call a spade a spade. Attorney General Bondi didn't hold back. She called Massie a failed politician. She's wrong about that. She claims he has Trump derangement syndrome. She's right about that. Now, Thomas is a patriot, but he's one of the few Republicans, of course, who still openly criticizes the president. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I think his feud is starting to look like a liability, because while Massie was grumbling about inscrutable redactions, Bondi was pointing to the scoreboard. The Dow's at 50,000, the S&P's at 7,000, the madman in the Oval Office is taking out narco dictators. Massie is focusing on the font size of the footnotes while Trump is winning a global battle here. And look who Massie's standing with in the fight. He's appearing at press conferences with Khanna and that slime Jamie Raskin, the man who called our Attorney General the washed-up loser lawyer just yesterday. When you find yourself as the Republican validator for a Democrat-led fishing expedition, against your own party's administration, who's really winning? Right? Massie is a master of the procedural win, but in the 2026 arena, the elite, the casta, is the enemy. So by going in and creating this huge feud with Trump, he's giving cover to the very people who want to keep the bureaucrat, the administrative state, alive and well. Frickety says, I think Massie's playing by the old rules, not what the game is actually being played today. I agree. Now, we need Thomas Massie in the foxhole. We need his brain, his grit, and his commitment to the Fourth Amendment. We wish he fought the Democrats as hard as he fought the Republicans. But we don't need him sabotaging the most transparent administration in history because of a few redactions that the DOJ is already working to fix after having to labor under tight deadline that you placed under them. Bondi revealed that they've already unredacted names like Les Wexner and Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem once they were flagged. So it's working, right? Stop the theatrics, the grandstanding. Let's get back to the rebellion. Join the crew at forlibertynetwork.com, where we grill even the politicians that we like, guys. The arena is heating up, and we're just getting started. When we come back, we're going to dive deep into the Massie Bondi brawl that rocked Capitol Hill. Is our favorite constitutionalist from Kentucky losing the script, or is the DOJ playing games? I'm going to be joined by a man who knows the grassroots better than anyone, Cliff Maloney. Don't go anywhere. Wake Up America returns after this.
When the Founding Fathers dreamed of liberty, they forgot one thing: coffee. Introducing Founding Flavors Coffee, the brew that built America, and the brew that's fueling a new revolution, one kitchen at a time. Small batch roasted, Patriot approved, and disappearing faster than a red coat at Yorktown. Don't get left behind, soldier. Real patriots are starting their mornings with Founding Flavors. And trust us, freedom tastes better with a fresh cup in your hand. Stop drinking those tyrant brews who take your money and don't support your values. Stocks are limited, demand is booming, and your morning deserves a taste of liberty. Order now at forlibertyshop.com before the next shipment gets signed, sealed, and sold out. Founding Flavors Coffee, the official brew of morning rebellions everywhere. Get yours at forlibertyshop.com.
Are you tired of the strange radioactive effects of leftist culture? Do you ever wonder what happened to good old-fashioned American values? Well, fear no more, because there's a new force fighting back against the cultural rot of today. Introducing Culturama, a right-of-center talk show that's taking back the future today. Hosted by none other than blonde bombshell herself, Daniela Pensack. She's not just talking, she's taking culture back, with sharp takes, brilliant guests, and a few surprises along the way. Tune in to the live video podcast twice a week, because the future doesn't have to be weird. It can be Culturama.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian and always has been.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
What is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
Respond, and then the gentleman can move to his next question.
It's my time.
Within 40 minutes, you asked me a question. Within 40 minutes, Wexner's name was added back.
Within 40 minutes of me catching you red-handed.
There was one redaction out
where
of
he's
over
listed as a co-conspirator.
And we invited you in. This guy has Trump derangement syndrome. He needs to get, you're a failed politician. You need to get on these matters.
Chairman, please restore his time and remind the witness of the rules here.
There is no credible information.
God.
None.
Cringe. Welcome back to the arena. Yesterday, the House Judiciary Commission. It was a high-stakes collision between two titans on the right. On one side, Attorney General Pam Bondi, holding the line for Trump. She's touting the Dows at 50,000. She's trying to get some wins for the Republican Party. On the other side, our friend, Thomas Massie, the man who forced the Epstein Files into the light. But things, turned bizarre. So Massie accused Bondi of a cover-up. Bondi fired back, calling him a failed politician with Trump deranged syndrome. Guys, you're both awful. This brouhaha kind of has the liberty movement scratching his head. So is Massie's procedural purism helping the Democrats like Pramila Jayapal and Jamie Raskin, who are salivating over any rift they can find to help us make sense of this family feud? I'm bringing in the founder of the Pennsylvania Chase and a true freedom warrior, Cliff Maloney. Cliff, welcome to the Wake Up America show. It's good to see you again, brother. Thank you for coming back.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me, Austin.
Cliff, you've spent your life in the trenches for years. You are a seasoned political activist, liberty activist. You come from the same wing. We're the crazy guys. We're the party rock and roll liberty wing of the Republican Party. So of course Thomas Massie's in our camp. You've been a vocal supporter though of Trump and Thomas Massie, just like me for years. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. I'm watching them trade insults. Trump's calling Massie a moron. Bondi's calling him failed. How does this help the liberty movement's mission in 2026?
Yeah, look, I think at the end of the day, we've got to get to a point where these files are released in full. People can argue about Massie's tactics. They can argue about Massie's procedural way of doing it. But at the end of the day, he's right. The people voted in 2024 to release this. Trump ran on this. And I do think Trump wants to release this. I just think the problem in politics, and Austin, you know this, is nothing moves unless it's pushed. We're seeing that right now. We're seeing it with the SAVE Act, right? It's not just the Epstein files. It's any piece of legislation, because you've always got lobbyists on every which way and every side of these bills that their incentive is to push back. They want to muddy it up. They want to clog the system. So I agree. We need to see these files. I mean, Carl Higbee went on a rant on his show, and I mean, it was just so true. He said there's been 6 million pages of investigations. There's hundreds of victims, and there's no arrests. And I agree with Carl when he says he's encouraging Pam Bondi. He's encouraging Donald Trump because he wants to have a shot in the midterms. And that's where I think we all need to kind of figure this out. You can disagree with the style. You can disagree with the pressure points. But if Republicans are going to have a chance in 2026 for the midterms, the people need to see action. They need to see action not just on the border, not just on bringing prices down, but on the corruption in this pedophile sex trafficking ring. It is time to see arrests. The American people demand it, and it's the action that we need.
Now, Thomas Massie, we like to think of him as the constitutional conscience of the House, but he kind of seems to be in a bizarre game of chicken with his own party. So on Monday, he told the world he was ready to name the 6 powerful men that the DOJ was allegedly hiding. But on Tuesday, it was Democrat Ro Khanna who stood up on the House floor and read the list in the record. Why is a libertarian Republican letting this progressive from California take the lead on a bill that he authored?
Well, look, I think that when they went over and read the unredacted files, I mean, like Thomas said in the hearing, you know, immediately afterwards, when it's kind of been exposed about Lex Warner, all of a sudden the FBI and the DOJ are taking action to kind of get in front of some of these things. I mean, look, I'm for any type of tactic that leads to transparency. I'm for any tactic. I don't care who gets credit. So why Thomas is working with Ro Khanna or whoever he's working with, I totally get, you know, those questions. But at the end of the day, to me, it's, do we have transparency for one of the most corrupt, despicable sex trafficking rings with the most powerful people in the free world? Whatever leads to more transparency, I'm a fan of that.
Okay, but here's my problem with that. And I agree with you in theory, but in practice, Massie spent last weekend building up this massive hype, and he was saying he had, quote, 6 men who were, quote, likely incriminated by their inclusions in the files. But when the time came for him to speak them out, he said he should probably do it from the floor, and then nothing. So why is he hesitating? Is he afraid of legal blowback, or is he losing his nerve? Where's the transparency?
I've never known Thomas Massie to lose his nerve. I think at the end of the day, there's probably some strategy here. I think he's got plenty of time to continue to look at this. Maybe he's giving the DOJ an opportunity. Once again, I don't think Thomas is trying to lose the midterms, right? I think what he's trying to do is use pressure points to get to the truth. And so, no, I'm not, here to say that I know the exact strategy, but I'm here to say I trust Thomas Massie. And I think a lot of the folks in MAGA world that are going to war against him, think about what you're going to war for. You're going to war to back hiding the Epstein files. If you're mad that he's pushing to have it happen expediently, okay, you can get upset about that. But the underlying thing that he is pushing, we all agree with. We want to see what's in these files. And as they say at the end of National Treasure, somebody stole the Declaration of Independence, Ben. Somebody's got to go to prison, right? That's where we're at right now. Somebody's got to go to prison. We need to see arrests. And once again, we can argue the speed or the procedures. But at the end of the day, let's all say here, let's have a kumbaya moment. We want the transparency of seeing the Epstein files. And we want to see it now.
I agree. I'm with you on theory, but I think that there's one massive glaring hole in that logic, because it forgets that Trump also has a massive plan. Trump also has a strategy, and Trump has been delivering win after win after win after win. And I have just been shocked at the things that have come out of the Trump administration. Wins for liberty, true wins for liberty. They destroyed an environmental rule last week. They said it was the greatest act of deregulation in American history because they got rid of this climate law that said, this climate rule that said, carbon is pollution and therefore it can be regulated under the Clean Air Act. And so it's a $1 trillion regulation. Trump also has a strategy. And what we did find out, and I mean, I think this leaves a little egg on Thomas's freshly hairy face here, but is that Trump was the first guy to call. Massie and Massie's biggest supporters have spent the last several months calling the president a pedophile. And now we find out that the president was the first guy to report him to the cops, the first celebrity to come out and say, hey, go investigate Ghislaine Maxwell. Massie and his people insinuated that the president was trying to protect himself from pedophilia. Now, where's the transparency on that one? Where's the oops moment on that one? Because those were some pretty heavy, even Elon Musk walked that back after he said it and apologized and said it. Will we see that from Massie or his people? No, they're going to continue to try and destroy the administration like Trump is a pedophile here. But Cliff, it's deeply awkward to support Thomas Massie at a Republican meeting when people bring up things like that. And you have to say, oh, whiffed it or not whiffed it, Cliff?
Well, look, I think you bring up something that's very important, which is you talk about the idea that Trump and the administration has had amazing success with certain issues, certain battles. And I agree, right? This is why I went all in on 2024. And I got a lot of heat from the more libertarian, principled folks. How could you do this? Obviously, having Donald Trump in the White House has led to tremendous victories. I'm going to go to war in 2026 in the general election to try to make sure we keep the House, to make sure we keep the Senate. I'm all in for Team Red. I'm rooting for Pam Bondi. I'm rooting for Donald Trump. But at the same time, I can also root for Thomas Massie because I feel like they all bring different attributes to the table. Do I have any issue speaking firmly about this? That I think Trump was one of the first people to lead on this, to call the Palm Beach Police Department and say, hey, get this guy off my property here at Mar-a-Lago? Of course we commend that. I've never had any doubts about Trump in terms of the Epstein Files, but that's what's happened here is it's become so partisan where Democrats want to see the Epstein Files because they're just hell-bent that Trump's in them. And Republicans want to see them because they're hell-bent on the Clintons. And at the end of the day, we all want to see them, right? I'm not here to say what's in it. I'm just here to say we should be fighting to see them.
I want to fight. I agree. And I want to fight for Thomas Massie, Cliff. I'm here in Missouri, right? We border Kentucky, right? You have to understand, like, the temperature, the attitude has changed so strongly against him that here in Missouri, my Republican conservative politicians, he has made himself so toxic as to be radioactive. So the problem is, if you want to fight for Thomas Massie, then you're standing arm in arm with shoulders of people who are calling the president a pedophile. How do you build a useful coalition to defend Thomas Massie and save your own skin, Cliff, from those attacks? Here's my thing. So if you were a PR flack, would you continue to run with the Donald Trump's a pedophile and was just trying to cover himself in the Epstein Files? What's the play for Thomas Massie to keep his seat? Because, everybody's like, oh, he's fine. He's going to be safe. He's fine. He's going to be safe. I don't think that anybody needs to take an attitude of everything's guaranteed in politics, because you and I both know that things can change pretty damn quick overnight. So, what's the strategy here? Is it that Donald Trump's a pedophile? How do we get Massie back in the good graces of the larger party so that he can actually accomplish his libertarian ideas rather than just constant war with the president? Do you see what I'm saying here, Cliff? These are serious problems for people who, like us, want to advance libertarian proposals, not just get into a fight about who's a pedophile online.
Agreed. What I would say to you is I think that Massie's path to victory is doing what he's done in every other election, which is focusing locally. Now, we follow things, on Twitter, we follow things that are kind of the big picture and things that are happening in D.C. On the ground in his district, he's still got great support. Now, I will say this, Austin, on your show, and I don't mean to scare anybody. Massie's in trouble. Okay, let me say that one more time. Thomas Massie is in trouble. There's the full weight of MAGA Inc. There's the full weight, a lot of my friends, to be honest with you, that are going against Massie, that are hell-bent on making sure that there is a message sent here against anybody that steps out of line from Mike Johnson. And that's what this is. It's stepping out of line from Mike Johnson. I know we all tie it back to Trump and those issues, but the reality is it's Mike Johnson's house, Mike Johnson directing a lot of these endorsements, and Mike Johnson kind of figuring out how he's going to maintain a majority. And so to me, it's going local, right? Thomas Massie has to work his rear end off. He has to have volunteers and activists in the district. And he's got to focus on the local issues. What are the issues impacting Kentucky? How does he maintain trust with the people of the 4th District of Kentucky? That is the challenge he has. Now, for over a decade, he's represented them, and he's had some of the highest numbers when it comes to favorability, when it comes to winning his primary and general elections. But this is going to be the real test. And if he wins this one, I think he's safe for a long time. But if there's ever a chance to take out Massie, and I hate to say it, it's this cycle. So if people want to support him, now's the time. If people want to come out and help him, now is the time. But messaging-wise, Austin, I think he's got to focus a lot more, not on the national issues, but focusing on who he is, his roots in the district, and what he's done for the district over the last decade.
Okay, so you're a door knocker. What script do you write for Thomas Massie door knockers when they show up and they issue an objection saying that they support President Trump and they're sick and tired of Thomas Massie calling him a pedophile? Where does Cliff? I'm an expert at communications. If anybody could pull off a script like that and turn them into a Thomas Massie supporter at the door, I could. So what's the script? What do you say? How do you defend him at the door?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is, listen, Thomas Massie. I think, by the way, the message that they're running has nothing to do with the Israel issue. The message that they're running has nothing to do with Epstein. Everything that they're running in the district against Thomas Massie is strictly that he's a liberal Republican, that he's far left, that he's anti-Trump, he's anti-school teacher, anti-firefighter, anti-kid. It's all your typical talking points in a Republican primary. Anti-gun, he's not pro-life, he's pro-choice. So I'm sharing that with you, Austin, because I know this. I hear from teams on the ground, right? That's the message they're having to combat. People are not at the door saying, hey, I'm just giving you the reality, right? People at the door are not saying, hey, he called Trump this. And they might say, well, him and Trump don't get along, so why should I support him? And a lot of that messaging at that point is, look, Thomas Massie, right? And if you're a door knocker, you're saying to them, look, I support Donald Trump. I support Thomas Massie. They represent the best parts of our party, and they have differences on certain things, and I wish they handled them a little differently. But Thomas, and he's a fighter, and he's going to fight for you.
Yeah, it's and just I just hate this feud because Massie and Trump they are on the same team to some extent, but they were getting along. I mean, Cliff, you and I, we know the insiders were talking about Massie being slid into the head of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. What a huge missed opportunity that was for us. Right now, he'll never pass the Prime Act. Right? It's any kind of like push for political power to gain. Traction for that issue, boy, that is long gone until I don't even know when. And then, I mean, just from a personal thing here, Cliff, I think, it's not bad. I might be able to sell that script, but from a personal level, now it used to be that Massie, BAGA, you would make these coalitions work. Now, whenever I find myself among Massie supporters who are my natural allies, right? Now, whenever I find them, I have to deal with, you brought up Israel, so groypers, and then people who call the president a pedophile and who are completely black-pilled and demoralized about the United States. So it's like I'm surrounded by people who are black-pilled, demoralized, calling the president a pedophile. Oh, and they also hate my Jew wife. So what am I supposed to do, Cliff? What am I supposed to do? All of Thomas Massie's biggest allies, they hate the president because he's a pedophile, and they hate my Jew wife because she's a Jew. What do I do, Cliff? What do I do?
I think it's called finesse. You're not going to like the answer, but it's. I mean, listen, it's finesse, the line I toe.
Man,
it's the line I toe every day. I mean, listen, I've got tons of friends in MAGA world. We're prepared to go all in for JD Vance in 2028. We've committed to do 2026, 2027, and 2028. for J.D. Vance in Pennsylvania and a few other target swing states. And at the same time, I support Thomas Massie, And so, yeah, I'm living in both worlds.
This sucks.
But I think that there's rationale to do it. What's the saying? It's my world. And I don't know what it is, but I'm telling you,
J.D. Vance.
It sucks right now. Austin Peterson.
It sucks. Yeah,
it sucks.
He hates J.D. Vance. You know who hates? You know who Thomas Massie's number one hater is? J.D. Vance. He hates him. You know who else he hates? Rand Paul. J.D. Vance hates Rand Paul. He can't stand him. And now here we are looking at this. Other people destroyed the castles that you and I built, Cliff, right? With casual disregard. And now what are we going to do? We got no choice. We got to go build new castles.
I hope you brought your red shoes because we're going to be building a lot of red walls. Yeah, I got no answers. At the end of the day, like I said, it sucks right now. But I think you got to pick your battles. And I think we get through the Massie thing. Let's get him over to finish line. And then I think you got to figure out how you get back to the table at Thanksgiving with the family.
I don't know, man. It's like, I agree. I think that unfortunately it's our side that needs the tough love a little bit more than the MAGA people. There seems to be this overconfidence from libertarians and Massie supporters that I don't share. I'm not so confident that things are going to be easy, right? There's this kind of false bravado that I think does borderline into a grandstanding impact. It's like you watch people who have no political power, who have no chance, get up on stage, and believe me, I've done it. I've run that play and got my face smashed into the dirt for it, Cliff. Now, I'm not Thomas Massie. Thomas Massie's actually won elections, so he has that on us, or me.
Well, we're about to get a good lesson in one of my favorite sayings, which is losers don't legislate, right? So at the end of the day, I mean, that's the reality. You and me have debated this and talked through this on the show many times. Look, I get when people run in a Republican primary and, they're outspent 30-1 and don't have a shot. I get when people run as independents. I get when they run as libertarians. But I mean that losers don't legislate. And if Massie loses this, it's not just a message from Trump. It's not just a message that, the liberty movement is dead. It's a message that we don't have a voice. And so I do think it is imperative to understand that you got to win. And so, yeah, it's going to be difficult. We're going to have to figure this out. But if he loses, I mean, it's not even an equation anymore, right? At that point, I mean, we've got Rand, we've got a couple other folks in the Freedom Caucus. But this to me is about playing the cards you're dealt. Maybe we could have played them a little differently. But we are where we are.
Cliff,
we need to win.
You're right. But you know what's interesting? There's a lot of people who are like us, like you and me, Cliff. You'd be shocked. I know that you're always like talking about the Facebook idiots and wasting time arguing on Facebook and stuff, and they're like the loud majority. But when I'm making phone calls to people about this libertarian nationalism that I'm building, they very much are kind of like you and I. Like they like Thomas Massie, but they want him to get along with President Trump. It's like level-headed, normal, average people, not the sort of psychotic schizos online. They really do feel the same way as you and I, Cliff. So I think there is a path to a good door-knocking script for you. And I just think that it might be a different way than you'd ever thought. And if you have questions about that, my consultancy is not cheap. But Cliff, tell us a little bit about what you're working on these days. Are you working on the Pennsylvania chase? Are you building the 4-year campaign? Do you have infrastructure? Are you hiring people right now to go out and work to fight for liberty? Talk to us about your latest intrigue.
Yeah, so we've announced the PA Chase will continue this year. We're doing 750,000 doors in 2026. We're going to be doing 1 million doors in 2028. This year, we've got 3 congressional districts. We've got to defend Scott Perry, Rob Bresnahan, and Ryan McKenzie. Austin, all 3 of them are going to be very difficult. The Democrats are very well funded. They've been on TV for, pretty much they never went off air after 2024. When it comes to negatives. So it is going to be extremely difficult. We've got a governor's race. The Democrat governor, Josh Shapiro, is up for re-election. And so we've got Stacey Garrity, the likely nominee to take him on. And then we've got to take our state house back. We're down 102 to 101 in the state house. We're down by 1 seat out of 203 seats. So we've got a couple targets there. And we've got to protect the state Senate. We've got a couple rhinos in there that I'd like to see get kicked out. But at the end of the day, we got to make sure we hold that majority. Those are the measures. right? I always tell people on your show, I want to be held accountable. Those are the things we're aiming for. Now, not all of them are going to be feasible, but we're going to fight like hell. And those 750,000 doors we're knocking are how we're going to do that. And as I've said before, the objective is to make PA a red wall for 2028 so that Democrats really have no path to the White House. If folks want to get involved, you can either sponsor a ballot chaser for $175 a day, or heck, if you want to chase ballots, apply today. phchase.com. That's phchase.com. Also want to share with your audience, Austin, we are in New Hampshire. New Hampshire is going to be a major target. And over the next couple months, I want to come back and make some big announcements to the audience here about a couple other states we're going to be targeting. But right now, all in on Pennsylvania, all in on New Hampshire, with PA being the main target at phchase.com. And folks can follow me, as always, on X at Maloney, dropping my hot takes, knocking a lot of doors, and appreciate you guys as always.
Thank you very much, Cliff. We appreciate you, and thanks for taking the hard knocks for liberty, because it ain't easy doing what you're doing. You have a good one.
All right, take care, guys. Thank you.
Bless you, sir. All righty, so let's talk a little bit about campaign jobs. So campaign jobs, how do I get a paid job working on a campaign? How do I actually get involved? It's instead of you sending me $10 frickety to say $10 for the cause, thank you very much. It's me giving you money to get out there and to take our country back. We have got good paying jobs in politics, paid training, paid travel, get you to wherever you need to go. Are you going to sweat? Yep. You're going to be walking a lot. You're going to get some exercise, maybe lose a little weight, but you're going to get well paid for it, and you'll be back working hard to restore our country. So what am I talking about? Campaign jobs. campaignjobsnow.com/AP for liberty. That's campaignjobsnow.com/AP for liberty. When you head over there, make sure you tell them Austin Peterson sent you, and they will put you in an interview process, and you guys will be able to apply for an incredible job at campaignjobsnow.com/AP for liberty.
This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves. Now, it doesn't require expropriation or confiscation of private property or business to impose socialism on a people. What does it mean whether you hold the deed to or the title to your business or property if the government holds the power of life and death over that business or property? And such machinery already exists. The government can find some charge to bring against any concern it chooses to prosecute. Every businessman has his own tale of harassment. Somewhere a perversion has taken place. Our natural unalienable rights are now considered to be a dispensation of government, and freedom has never been so fragile, so close to slipping from our grasp as it is at this moment. Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. Not too long ago, two friends of mine were talking to a Cuban refugee, a businessman who had escaped from Castro. And in the midst of his story, one of my friends turned to the other and said, "We don't know how lucky we are." And the Cuban stopped and said, "How lucky you are. I had some place to escape to." And in that sentence, he told us the entire story. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves. You and I are told increasingly we have to choose between a left or right. Well, I'd like to suggest there is no such thing as a left or right. There's only an up or down. Man's old age dream, the ultimate in individual freedom consistent with law and order, or down to the ant-heap of totalitarianism. And regardless of their sincerity, their humanitarian motives, those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. In this vote harvesting time, they use terms like the Great Society, Or, as we were told a few days ago by the President, we must accept a greater government activity in the affairs of the people. But they've been a little more explicit in the past, and among themselves, and all of the things I now will quote have appeared in print. These are not Republican accusations. For example, they have voices that say the Cold War will end through our acceptance of a not undemocratic socialism. Another voice says the profit motive has become outmoded. It must be replaced by the incentives of the welfare state. Or our traditional system of individual freedom is incapable of solving the complex problems of the 20th century. Senator Fulbright has said at Stanford University that the Constitution is outmoded. He referred to the President as our moral teacher and our leader, and he says he is hobbled in his task by the restrictions of power imposed on him by this antiquated document. He must be freed so that he can do for us what he knows is best. And Senator Clark of Pennsylvania, another articulate spokesman, defines liberalism as meeting the material needs of the masses through the full power of centralized government. Well, I, for one, resent it when a representative of the people refers to you and me, the free men and women of this country, as the masses. This is a term we haven't applied to ourselves in America. But beyond that, the full power of centralized government, this was the very thing the Founding Fathers sought to minimize. They knew that governments don't control things. A government can't control the economy without controlling people. And they know when a government sets out to do that, it must use force and coercion to achieve its purpose. They also knew, those Founding Fathers, that outside of its legitimate functions, government does nothing as well or as economically as the private sector of the economy.
Wake up, America. Today is February the 12th, Thursday, 2026. The world is shifting, and we are the only ones here on the Wake Up America show holding the line for the sovereign individual. You have unlocked the bonus content. Enjoy the bonus content. When we return from the bonus content, JD Tuchile spoke to me yesterday about NATO. Is the United States going to be their sugar daddy, Europe's sugar daddy forever? We'll be right back. It's the Wake Up America show on the 4 Liberty Network.
On the national debt will cost $16 trillion over the next 10 years. A new Congressional Budget Office outlook expects entitlement spending and the national debt to explode in the next decade. Increased spending on old age entitlements and the cost of financing the national debt will push annual budget deficits from $1.9 trillion this year to over $3 trillion by 2036. That's according to the Congressional Budget Office's, CBO, latest 10-year budget estimate released Wednesday morning. Over the next decade, the CBO expects the national debt to hit a record high of more than 120% of America's gross domestic product, exceeding the previous high of 106% near the end of World War II. Much of that new borrowing will occur despite an anticipated increase in federal revenue, which the CBO expects will increase from about $5.6 trillion this year to $8.3 trillion by 2036. That increase in revenue is completely swamped by a projected rise in government spending, which will surge from about $7 trillion this year to over $11.4 trillion by the end of the 10-year budget window. Nearly all of the expected increase in spending is a result of entitlement spending and the rising cost of servicing that massive pile of debt. The federal government will spend over $1 trillion on interest payments this year, and the CBO expects those interest payments to more than double over the next 10 years. Over the course of the 10-year budget window, the federal government will spend an estimated $16 trillion on interest payments. That's $16 trillion in taxes that won't buy taxpayers any new government services, but will merely pay the tab run-up in previous years. The major tax bill that Republicans passed and President Donald Trump signed last year will contribute to the worsening fiscal picture. The CBO estimates that policy changes implemented by the One Big Beautiful Bill Act will add about $100 billion to the deficit this year and about $1.4 trillion to cumulative deficits over the next decade. On the other hand, higher tariffs imposed by the Trump administration will increase revenue by an estimated $3 trillion over the next decade, if they remain in place. The CBO's projections remind us that our fiscal trajectory remains unsustainable. Dominic Lett, a fiscal policy analyst at the Cato Institute, said in a statement. This reckless borrowing has real tangible costs for Americans, creating inflationary pressure, slowing economic growth, and making borrowing more costly. Indeed, studies have linked higher debt to rising interest rates and persistent inflation. Higher interest rates or higher inflation could, in turn, worsen the CBO's already bleak projections. The 10-year budget outlook released Wednesday assumes that inflation will stabilize at 2%, it is currently 2.7%, and that interest rates will fall in the coming years. Fiscal hawks have been warning for years that unforeseen spikes in inflation, like the one that hit after the pandemic, or other emergencies would expose the federal government's precarious fiscal position. Maya McGuineas, president of the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, a nonprofit that advocates for reducing deficits, said in a statement that the new CBO report contains no bright spots of encouraging news. A healthy balance sheet is critical for a growing economy, national security, and the ability to respond to unforeseen emergencies, she added. At this moment in time, with challenges ranging from the aging of society to growing geopolitical rivalries, it is nothing short of self-sabotage to operate with such a self-imposed disadvantage.
If you want that video clip, guys, I know you were really into it, then feel free to send me a text at the phone number you see at the bottom of the screen. I'm always happy to share the clips that I play on the show with anybody who wants to grab them if you're interested in finding out more. Wake up, America. For decades, the high society elites of Western Europe have enjoyed a luxurious, taxpayer-funded lifestyle at your expense. They built their socialist paradises on the back of the American defense umbrella while we footed the bill for their security. Why don't you have socialized healthcare? We don't do that in Germany. But then came Donald Trump with a Mafia Don approach that has finally broken the freeloading cycle. He made him an offer that they can't refuse. He didn't use diplomatic niceties. He used a steel-toed boot. Trump famously told NATO leaders that if they didn't pay their bills, he would just refuse to protect them. He'd encourage Russia to do whatever the hell they want, and guess what? Tough love works. Spurred by what the media calls a hostile president, Europe is finally, huffily, taking responsibility for its own defense. Joining us now to discuss why the Mafia Don Doctrine may be the best thing to happen to the Atlantic Alliance, it's JD Tuccilli of Reason Magazine. Good morning, JD, and thank you for joining us on the show today.
My pleasure. So what's going on is that Donald Trump did what no other president has been able to do. We know that the Europeans have been freeloading off of U.S. defense for decades. To put it into context, NATO publishes a report every year that shows the scale of contributions by each of the NATO partners. And in 2019, the U.S. represented 52% of the collective GDP of all the members of NATO. But we made 70% of all NATO military expenditures. So, I mean, disproportionate in a big way by about 50%. And the Europeans were just riding our coattails. And this had real implications for what it meant for defense for Europe. The Wall Street Journal did a piece in 2023 pointing out that the UK, which is a nuclear power, and actually is pretty well armed for a European country, has 150 serviceable tanks. France has 90 heavy artillery pieces, which is what Russia loses every month on the battlefield. And Germany has all of enough ammunition for 2 days of combat, so should a war start. So, I mean, they're not only underspending the U.S., it's not like they're doing so efficiently. They're just disarmed. And they've been riding our coattails for a very long time.
Why didn't they learn the lessons of World War II when France got just rolled by the Blitzkrieg? Now, JD, you and I both agree that governments are nothing more than professional armed gangs. You called Trump's approach acting like a mafia don slapping around his goons. But is this style the only way to get 27 different nations to stop freeloading? Do we need a Michael Corleone for a job like this?
I don't know if it's the only way. I mean, I think I would prefer something that doesn't completely alienate every other little democracy in the world. However, it is an effective way.
Japan
it's
loves
something
this.
that works.
Hey, to be fair, Jay, not every democracy hates us. We still have Sanae Takaichi and her nationalist caucus that took over in Japan. So it's just these effete lefty Europeans that are angry at us, which no big loss in my view, but continue.
And we still have Javier Milei, and I'll take Javier Milei in Argentina.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, honestly, cajoling them didn't work. Trying to persuade them didn't work. Even pointing out that Russia was no longer, toothless didn't work. So yeah, I mean, alienating them, making them frightened that we actually would not come to their defense at a time when there's a big war going on Europe's doorstep. That finally worked. Refusing to defend them if they don't pay their dues. And suddenly, Poland, I give all credit to Poland, has kind of led the way in terms of really ramping up their expenditures and becoming a military power. But the other European countries are being dragged kicking and screaming towards a realization that they actually have to fend for themselves, that if they don't do so individually, at least do so collectively as Europeans, because the U.S. is not reliable on this front. The one country we can't seem to control is Canada. Canada knows that we can't afford for anything to happen to them. They're right our neighbor, they're our doorstep, and so honestly, they're going to free ride as long as they can. There's probably very little we can do about that. But the Europeans have a real threat right there in the form of Russia and China on the other side of Russia, either acting through Russia or on its own. And they have to start building and deploying weapons and taking on the capability for their own national defenses. And that is finally starting to happen. I mean, we discussed before how disproportionate U.S. expenditures have been. Well, in the latest report for 2024, the U.S. share of GDP for NATO is 53% of all the NATO allies, but our share of military spending is down to 64%. So the Europeans really are kicking it up a notch. But there's a problem built into those numbers.
For example?
Well, the fact is that since 2019, Finland and Sweden have joined NATO. So there's two more NATO partners now, but the U.S. share of full NATO GDP has risen by a point, even with two more countries added to the mix. And what this points out is that the U.S. economy is much more dynamic than European countries' economies. The fact is our economy is outstripping Europe. We could talk, and I'd be willing to talk all day about the mistakes of the Trump administration on economic issues, but they pale by comparison to those of the European countries. And Europe is rapidly losing ground, which means that in order to pay their fair share of NATO military expenditures, they're having to make some difficult economic choices. And frankly, they're going to have to revamp their economic policies. They've got to turn back to free markets and dynamism and innovation if they hope to catch up and be able to sustain themselves in the future.
They're like the sick man of Europe, right? Turkey, now the entire European Union. I think we crossed some metric a few years ago where our poorest state, Mississippi, is poorer than any nation in the European Union, JD. We are so far beyond them. But I kind of feel, and this is maybe just a socio-political or maybe psychopolitical thing here, but I think, and I represent a lot of Americans who live in flyover country here in Missouri. I and a lot of my fellow Missourians, we're sick and tired of the European stereotypes of Americans being told that we're fat, we're obese, we're stupid, we're obnoxious, we're loud, and then simultaneously being told that we're a backward civilization because we don't have socialized healthcare schemes. Meanwhile, the only reason they can afford their socialist security schemes are because of the American military might or rockets that are protecting them in their liberal lefty cafes that they dine in, under the protection of American nuclear cloaks, under the protection of B-2 bombers that are launched right here from Missouri, where I live. So do you think that Trump is really playing to the MAGA base and to the people who support him with policies like these? Do you think that he sort of feels, being such a nationalist as he is, he just thinks that these Europeans are obnoxious and that they've acted like spoiled brats for too long and it's time to cut them off? And do you agree with him on that? And if so, do you agree with him?
Yeah, I do. I mean, he's playing to his base, but he's also playing to reality. I mean, back in the 80s, we were calling Europeans Eurotrash. And that's back when they were almost as wealthy as we are. I mean, the fact is, the last
Euro poors.
Yeah, now it's Euro poors. And that's because they weren't poor back then. But they were obnoxious. Now they're obnoxious and they're poor. In the last 20 years, the average European, share of GDP, average European income, has gone from being 3/4 of that of an American to being half that of an American. Europe on average now is Alabama, but with pizza. I mean, that's really what we're talking about. And Alabama has a more dynamic economy. It's getting wealthier. Europe is not. It's getting comparatively poorer. So, I mean, Trump, again, style, approach. Would I prefer doing it a different way? Yeah. But Trump has recognized a reality, which is the Europeans have not been paying their own way. And by the way, not only with not paying for their militaries are they, using that money to pay for their welfare states, but they're eating their seed corn because they still can't afford those welfare states. That's why they're getting poorer. So even as they don't sustain themselves defensively, they still can't afford these cradle to grave welfare states that they've built. They have to build dynamic economies. They have to free up innovation. We're also going to fall further and further behind and continue skating along on whatever is left of what they had before the world wars.
JD, to quote the great Billy Shakespeare, the American liberty movement has already grown sick and pale with grief. I proudly wear my Make America Great Again dark MAGA hat here. I still call myself a libertarian, still believe the same things that I did, but I cannot say that Trump isn't getting some big wins here for things that people like you and I have been advocating for years. And yet, from inside the Beltway and from the intelligentsia and from the ivory towers of the places that you and I frequent when we were forced to go back into the monkey hives that are the blue cities, we're told that Trump is a disaster for democracy. There's endless virtue signaling over the behavior and the actions of ICE, for example, in Minnesota. Even Rand Paul concerned about these federal agents wearing masks while in the process of deporting people who have track records that would, I don't know, by any reasonable standard in Texas, they would have hit him with a brick over the head behind the Adobe house. Why is it that the American Liberty Movement now is in such a flux and disarray? And am I wrong in thinking that most libertarians seem to have just kind of gone off the reservation to the left and are just virtue signaling lefty talking points when it comes to immigration? I mean, I read Shika Dalmia's paper on the case for open borders, and even it advocates for immigration restrictions on it, but they never seem, nobody ever seems to argue what those restrictions look like. I mean, is it reasonable and fair to assume that even in a libertarian nation, that if we had our way, that, people who wanted to come here to do right would be able to have a path to citizenship, and the citizenship itself is a special status, and that, borders really do mean something because they hold together collectively and defend the ideas of individual liberty within the United States? Am I wrong? Am I obnoxious, or have I just been drinking the MAGA Kool-Aid, JD?
I think that there need to be some kind of restrictions, and most libertarians will agree that we don't want rapists and murderers and gangbangers coming across the border. But I'll point out that there's a factional dispute in the Trump administration. Tom Homan was on the losing side of that. He's kind of the moderate on this point. He wanted to go and just target the criminals, those who have been identified as gangbangers, rapists, or murderers. And he said it would take longer, but it would be more palatable and it would be a better approach. He was pushed to the side. Now he's back in charge because of the mess in Minneapolis. It's turning Americans off. You've got almost half of Americans, 46%, the last poll I saw, that want to abolish ICE. If you lose the midterms and if you lose elections, you don't get your policies enforced. So even within the Trump administration, there's a factional dispute, and the more moderate faction, of which Tom Homan is part, is rising to the fore because his faction doesn't feature ICE acting the way we used to describe ATF agents acting. Nobody wants goons in the street kicking indoors. But it doesn't matter what policy that we prefer that they're enforcing. That's just a bad way to do it. So does that mean that Trump is wrong on everything? No. But it does mean there are better ways of doing things and there are worse ways of doing things. So I don't think libertarians are virtue signaling.
No, but it just seems as if it does seem as if there is a virtue signaling going on. Dude, there was this quote from Thomas Jefferson. He said, "Do you think that would be transferred from despotism to liberty on a feather bed?" Meaning that there was going to be a little bit of blood and there was going to be some pain. And it just seems that there is this obnoxious attitude. Queer Marxist teachers strapping suicide vests to themselves and blowing themselves up in federal buildings. But we'll have to harden our hearts against such behavior by the left, JD. If Renee Good drives herself at federal officers and gets her face shot off, she becomes a good communist that day, JD. Am I to cry? Am I to virtue signal about the midterms when knowing deep down that these people wish us nothing but death and destruction? These are the people who want to lock us down in our homes. They care nothing about liberty. They demand that Second Amendment absolutists support them when their obnoxious nurse, Pretty Good, destroys federal property, gets in the face of federal agents with a gun, harasses them, and tussles with them, that we're supposed to take the side of the federal agents. So they are virtue signaling, JD. They are virtue signaling for these deranged communists and leftists who want people like you and I dead, who think that you and I are racist, whether or not we use the N-word, JD. It is virtue signaling, and I think maybe I hope you'll see that there are some grains of truth in what I'm saying. Am I right in such a way, or is Alex Putty and Renee Good, are they heroes?
There's a middle ground between calling Alex Putty and Renee Good heroes, and then the rest of this. Look, I shed no tears over progressives, Marxists, the totalitarians who would muzzle us all. But at the same point, I don't want people kicking in the doors because they're enforcing right-wing talking points either. I'm not looking for a police state from either side. And the fact of the matter is, if you want your preferred policies, you got to keep on winning elections. If you alienate the American people to the point that they turn your party out of power and hand it over to the opposing party, you're not getting anything. So,
right, but aren't we libertarians experts at alienating the public, JD? Aren't we the ones who don't we really have no credibility on that subject? No offense to you, but the greater...
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it seems that libertarians think that autism is the superpower, but and it's not the case. But at the same point, we have every right in the world to advocate for liberty against anybody who's threatening it, and to point out that the polls clearly show the Republicans are about to lose the midterms because they've alienated the American people. Why isn't the Department of Education abolished? The Republicans are the majority now that they're probably not going to have a year from now. Why is the Trump administration seemingly so dead set on pushing away the support that he won over, that put him back in office as only the second president in U.S. history to have 2 non-consecutive terms? Now he's driving the public away, and it looks like he's going to lose the midterms. That's not a good thing. So if you want your policies enforced, you figure out a way to do it that is palatable to the American people.
Well, does that argument apply to Thomas Massie? So if he is kicked out and loses his primary, he fell on his sword over the Epstein files. Would that been worth it?
Would it have been worth it? I mean, I'm not sure that he's going to lose that primary. I know that Trump wants him to lose that.
Yeah, I'm betting on him to win. I hope he does. But he sure has.
I mean, he's very good.
Talk about lose friends and alienate people. He's traded an audience of MAGA, of worthwhile support, the president having endorsed in the past, to now making them bitter enemies, and now nothing he ever advances in Congress will ever go forward. So he essentially becomes a beneficiary of American taxes and, a bully pulpit in Congress, which I guess is nice, but I'd rather see libertarian legislation passed.
If MAGA loses 40 seats in Congress, but Massie retains his seat, I would say that comparatively, Massie made the better gamble on that one. And that's right now
so
what
he stays in office, but he never passes a single bill.
Well, it'd be awesome if he did pass a single bill. I mean, Ron Paul had the same problem. Sometimes when your principles are so at odds with the prevailing principles in the major parties, you're kind of stuck there politically homeless. Now, he got elected to office. Ron Paul did, and then Thomas Massie did, and so did Rand Paul. And I'm glad to see them there as voices for, the liberty movement, and that's a good thing. I would hate to see them retain office by being completely unprincipled and adopting points of view and advocating policies that are hostile to our freedom. Now, would I like to see Massie pass more legislation? Yes, absolutely. Same with Rand Paul. But they are in office, and there are voices there right now. And right now, both of them look like better bets than the MAGA Republican Party, which is pushing away American voters.
I'm not sure.
Doesn't have to push away all the voters.
It just feels like we have alienated ourselves to the point of complete and utter irrelevance, and that the most that libertarians seem to be able to actionably complete are words, just complaints, right? No actual actionable plan for us to take these ideals and principles and move them into the future, JD. I mean, you got kids, I've got kids, right? I'm thinking about the future. There's a lot of childless libertarians who are chasing their own short-term pleasures, while people like myself and yourself are trying to build a nation here because we have to worry about our posterity and we have to plant trees that we will not enjoy the shade, but we hope our grandchildren will live in. So how do we advance libertarian principles here that don't involve getting someone elected to be a congressman who is a libertarian, who talks about libertarianism, but who actually does shit and gets shit accomplished, even if it's messy, even if it's dirty, even if it has to abandon a principle as a trade-off in order to get a victory here or there? What I'm asking is, when do we get our own Javier Milei, JD, instead of...
If I could clone Javier Milei, raise him in the U.S. and give us a few more generations of people like him, I would. I mean, that'd be fantastic. No, we need to build an effective political movement, not just an ideology. I would look at examples like Rand Paul and Massie because they are in office. And as the populist nationalist movement shows itself hostile to liberty and potentially sputters out in 28, don't know that it will. Crystal balls don't work all that well in politics, as we well know. But these people provide a core to build a functioning political movement around because, unlike a lot of other libertarians, they're in office and they have supporters. And it looks like they're going to retain their positions in Congress.
I don't think a lot of these populist nationalists are hostile to liberty. I think they're hostile to American libertarians. I think that if American libertarians were more like Javier Milei, rather than just trying to clone him, right? If we were more like Javier Milei, then we would probably be more effective. But Javier Milei is diplomatic with Trump. He works with Trump. He builds a coalition with Trump. And I think that, that means that you don't get, if you're part of a coalition, you don't get everything that you want. But there does seem to be an all or nothing attitude amongst people who share our ideas. JD, am I wrong?
Well, Milei is diplomatic with Trump, but he wasn't diplomatic with his own political, antagonists in Argentina. Remember him wielding a chainsaw on stage? That was for the edification of his followers in Argentina. I mean, he came in as a thorn on their side, and he won office.
Well, those were his enemies, but those were his real enemies. But here's the thing: he started the Libertad Avanza party. There was already a libertarian party. He actually saw he called them Café Libertarios, right? The coffee club libertarians, and he didn't use them. He had to go around them because his enemies to his advancement of his principles were people who called him unprincipled. Look how Hans Hermann Hoppe is treating him, JD Tuchila. You know that I'm correct. That Javier Milei's political opposition were not just the left and the shit leftists. Javier Milei built a coalition with nationalists, went around libertarians to defeat the left. That's what I'm advocating for.
And I think that's valid because libertarians have not been very effective at getting beyond academic libertarianism, getting beyond good economics and good principles, and actually embracing functional politics. That's absolutely true. We need people who are better at actually working in politics. And that does mean building alliances. And it might be with nationalists. It might be, in the past, people talked about libertarians. That didn't work out so well. I mean, you got to be careful about these things, but you got to do it effectively. But we also need we've got the two that I can think of now who even have the capability of building that movement are Rand Paul and Thomas Massie. We need others like them who are capable of functioning in the political system that we have, but, and this is important, without so compromising their principles that there's nothing left. And that's a balancing act.
I agree, but I feel like I totally get where you're coming from, JD. I think it's just a matter of degrees here, where if you've got the principles down and you understand them, and let's say that if you're in a system where there is 100% anti-libertarian, if you are 99% not libertarian, but 1% libertarian, that's an improvement. And you're not a pure libertarian at that point. You don't have all of the principles. You're not engaging all the principles. You're not acting, in 99% of the time, you're an authoritarian little shit. But 1% of the time, I know people are not happy with small gains, but as I grow older and I grow more mature, JD, I think I want more freedom now. I'm sick of this liberty in our lifetime.
So do
talk.
I'm older than you, Austin. I'm older than you, and I got fewer years to look forward to. And the fact of the matter is, I'm tired of this also. But I also don't want to lose ground.
I agree. I read your column. I read the Rattler. I'm subscribed to it. I appreciate the work that you do. I think that you're definitely, I think that you're a rose among thorns in many ways, JD. I'll just say that. And I've really been glad to see. I hope that we can see you out in Freedom Fest in July if you happen to make it out there for the event. My For Liberty Network is out there. You'll be really interested to hear this, JD, but we're actually launching a show next month on my network that's going to be a bilingual show, and we're going to actively build a bridge between the Javier Milei, Libertad Avanza people and the United States. So I'd love to pick your brain about it and get your feedback on that another time. So if you have anything else you want to share or plug specifically, please do so right now.
Keep reading my stuff at reason.com and sign up for my email newsletter, because that way you won't forget about my columns. They'll arrive in your inbox.
Every single column he puts out, I read. It's valuable, worth its weight in gold. Sign up at Reason for the Rattler. JD Tuccilli, thanks so much for getting up early and being on camera with us. We appreciate you, sir.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Welcome back. Wake up, America. We've spent the last couple hours, doing what the drive-by media is genetically incapable of, telling you the truth with half my brain tied behind my back just to make it a fair fight. For decades, the administrative state told you that the Nixon era was a fever dream of paranoia. But today on this show, we stripped away that mask once and for all. We now have the unsealed grand jury testimony proving Joint Chiefs of Staff used a Navy yeoman named Charles Radford to spy on their own commander-in-chief, rifling through briefcases, stealing 5,000 documents to subvert the President of the United States. They were running the deep state game before it even had a name, and they've been trying to run it on Donald Trump since the day he stepped off the escalator. But here's the thing that the seltzer-soaked socialists at Slate and the West Elm Warriors just can't grasp. The madman Donald Trump is winning. While the urban elite are forgetting their own guns until a toddler spills a croissant on them, the adults are back in the arena. We're snatching narco-dictators out of their bedrooms in Caracas, while the very smart people call it a bluff. We're watching the Arctic gulag of the blue states collapse as California and New York bleed congressional seats to the free soil of Texas, Florida, Missouri. The Dow's over 50,000. The discombobulator is turning the lights on tyrants, and the swamp is in a terminal panic. If you aren't excited about this and where America is going, check your pulse, because the American heart is beating with the fire of 1,000 suns. And yet, my fellow Americans, as we look across this vast and storied land, we must realize that our struggle is not merely about electoral maps or about the technical specifications of a microwave weapon. It is a struggle for the very soul of the human experience. There are those in a far distant capital who believe they can plan your lives better than you can plan them for yourselves. They see you not as a person, but as a unit of a protected class or a cog in a permanent bureaucracy. But they have forgotten the most unique and explosive idea in the history of man, that the government is beholden to the people and not the other way around. We are a nation that has a government, a small, limited, and strictly defined servant to protect the energy and the individual genius that God has placed within every single one of you. Freedom is not a gift from a bureaucrat. It is a fragile miracle that must be fought for, defended, and handed down with the well-fought lesson of how to keep it. We're at a crossroads, a time for choosing. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. But look at the tide. From the surgical capture of that communist Maduro to the dismantling of the climate cult, a freedom tide is rising that no empire and no tyrant can resist forever. We are reclaiming our sovereignty, the sovereignty of the nation and the absolute unyielding sovereignty of the individual person. So let the permanent bureaucracy tremble. Let the ruling elite in their falling cities take note. We will not be silent. We will not be meek. We are a humane and generous people, but we will never substitute a government check for a paycheck, and we will never trade our God-given liberty for the false security of a cage. The sun is rising. Wake up, America. It's a new American era. It's a city on a hill that shines for every man and woman who yearns to breathe free. Our best days are not behind us. They're waiting for us, just over the horizon. Rise in freedom, America. I'll see you tomorrow, right back again here on the Wake Up America show and the 4 Liberty Network.
Interest on the national debt will cost $16 trillion over the next 10 years. A new Congressional Budget Office outlook expects entitlement spending and the national debt to explode in the next decade. Increased spending on old age entitlements and the cost of financing the national debt will push annual budget deficits from $1.9 trillion this year to over $3 trillion by 2036. That's according to the Congressional Budget Office's, CBO, latest 10-year budget estimate released Wednesday morning. Over the next decade, the CBO expects the national debt to hit a record high of more than 120% of America's gross domestic product, exceeding the previous high of 106% near the end of World War II. Much of that new borrowing will occur despite an anticipated increase in federal revenue, which the CBO expects will increase from about $5.6 trillion this year to $8.3 trillion by 2036. That increase in revenue is completely swamped by a projected rise in government spending, which will surge from about $7 trillion this year to over $11.4 trillion by the end of the 10-year budget window. Nearly all of the expected increase in spending is a result of entitlement spending and the rising cost of servicing that massive pile of debt. The federal government will spend over $1 trillion on interest payments this year, and the CBO expects those interest payments to more than double over the next 10 years. Over the course of the 10-year budget window, the federal government will spend an estimated $16 trillion on interest payments. That's $16 trillion in taxes that won't buy taxpayers any new government services, but will merely pay the tab run-up in previous years. The major tax bill that Republicans passed and President Donald Trump signed last year will contribute to the worsening fiscal picture. The CBO estimates that policy changes implemented by the One Big Beautiful Bill Act will add about $100 billion to the deficit this year and about $1.4 trillion to cumulative deficits over the next decade. On the other hand, higher tariffs imposed by the Trump administration will increase revenue by an estimated $3 trillion over the next decade, if they remain in place. The CBO's projections remind us that our fiscal trajectory remains unsustainable. Dominic Lett, a fiscal policy analyst at the Cato Institute, said in a statement, "This reckless borrowing has real tangible costs for Americans, creating inflationary pressure, slowing economic growth, and making borrowing more costly. Indeed, studies have linked higher debt to rising interest rates and persistent inflation. Higher interest rates or higher inflation could, in turn, worsen the CBO's already bleak projections." The 10-year budget outlook released Wednesday assumes that inflation will stabilize at 2%, it is currently 2.7%, and that interest rates will fall in the coming years. Fiscal hawks have been warning for years that unforeseen spikes in inflation, like the one that hit after the pandemic, or other emergencies would expose the federal government's precarious fiscal position. Maya McGuinness, president of the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, a nonprofit that advocates for reducing deficits, said in a statement that the new CBO report contains no bright spots of encouraging news. A healthy balance sheet is critical for a growing economy, national security, and the ability to respond to unforeseen emergencies, she added. At this moment in time, with challenges ranging from the aging of society to growing geopolitical rivalries, it is nothing short of self-sabotage to operate with such a self-imposed disadvantage.